Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of the anime Sword Art Online 2. And I mainly am reviewing this one because there's a limited amount of stuff on Netflix, and I saw that they are doing a Gun Gale Online kind of game for Sword Art Online for the Xbox, and I'm like, okay, I kind of wanted to see what Gun Gale Online was about in the universe of Sword Art Online, and since it's a Japanese anime game that's on the Xbox, I almost am like, I kind of want more of that stuff, so I hope it would be kind of interesting. So, in the first part of this, it deals with Gun Gale Online, and I thought overall it was interesting. I really liked Sinon's character and her actually going into this world to kind of deal with the trauma of using a gun and killing someone in the real world and kind of using it as like an immersion therapy to try and get more comfortable with guns. Now, granted, it hasn't completely helped her because she freaks out whenever someone imitates a gun. She holds one that's even like a replica, and I wish that more of the stuff was like dealt with her. Now, granted, I did like how they were using Kirito throughout this to kind of like bring more depth to his character, talking about how traumatic it is to act like have to kill someone in Sword Art Online. So I'm glad that they used at least some portion to kind of like bring that in and kind of deal with that, because that really I don't think was dealt with effectively in the first Sword Art Online. So of course it starts off and we see like Gun Gale Online, we're kind of introduced to it. Sinon is like a sniper and does some pretty badass things. And, of course, we find this one dude that's like killing players in the game called Death Gun. And, of course, Kirito is pretty much brought in as a VR MMO kind of investigator because of the one government guy that's kind of like looking into this. So, of course, he's compensating Kirito and like, alright, we need you to go in and find this. Of course, Kirito is somewhat leery because he's like, I don't want to die in a game. You know what I mean? It's like, now granted, he's still got more of the part of like, okay, I kind of want to figure this out, kinda, but he's still like, I really don't want to be put in another death scenario again. So, he's able to kind of get through it while also trying to build like sensory stuff for Yui to kind of like see. That's kind of an interesting aspect, like trying to, we see him going from like, I don't want to be a player, I want to be more of a creator, so that's kind of why he like accepts this for like money to kind of like do all this kind of stuff and building things and trying to like, he's trying to figure out how to minimize the differences between virtual world and the real world, so pretty much that he can make Yui be alive. It's like, okay, that's interesting. Not much, well, that kind of stuff comes in later in the kind of third part. There's kind of three parts in this. This Gun Gale Online takes up like the first kind of 12 episodes. So he gets in, and we find out that his avatar is very androgynous, more along the lines of looking like a female avatar. Evidently, this is a coveted and rare kind of thing, and I don't. This is played off as kind of humorous because Sinon at first thinks that he's a girl and he kind of plays it off, but I don't. The humor doesn't really jive that well because I would feel that this kind of like joke would have ran better in an anime series that was more used to it. Instead, it feels kind of out of place. I don't mind the joke. I just feel like it would have been better executed in something else because nothing much is like done for it except that like Sinon's pissed off that Kirito lied about being a girl because she's like changing into her clothes, and that's about it. It's like, okay. Okay. Oh, and Kirito uses a sword in a gun game. I, I understand that you're thinking like the pause that I would take for that to sink in. Like he's using essentially a lightsaber. Now, granted, I love Star Wars. I love lightsabers. It's like Kirito uses a sword in a gun game. You could have like developed this character and put him into such a backward situation that oh, he's got to use guns now. And you're like, okay, I understand he's got a pistol. I get that. And he somewhat uses it. But this would have really, I would have liked to have seen, this could have been stretched out into a really interesting arc. Because the main problem that I've noticed with Sword Art Online is that it does not do pacing very well. It really condenses stuff into such a short time frame, because we see Kirito pretty much jumping. He is like switched over all this character stuff so that he can get into Gun Gale as fast as possible, which evidently means that his speed, of course, is still insane, because his speed was insane with the other ones, because he can get money out of nowhere, because of this challenge, and buys his lightsaber, and signs up for the Bullet of Bullets tournament, because that's like essentially a PUBG kind of tournament where everybody's put in this area and they have to be the last man standing. And seriously, Bullet of Bullets, there could have been a such better name for that. And it's like, okay. And this noob, who has not played the game, who's played it for 5 minutes, you let this person into a tournament? Against people that have grinded out stats and weapons to do this stuff. It's like, okay, I understand they're like, this would be the best place for this death gun person to go in and start killing people. Okay. So they get in, start getting through their stuff. Kirito is able to kind of figure out everything that's going on with Sinon. They get into the final rounds of all that. We start finding out that the way that they're killing players is not the same as the original SAO, but that there's 3 people that are doing it. So you got the one in the game as the avatar who shoots at the person, and then we've got someone who sneaks into their target and kills them with some kind of poison. And we find out that it is Sinon's friend that is one of these people and can get to the hospital supplies. And, of course, him and he was pissed off because his build was pretty much turned to trash because of how they were balancing the game. His brother was a former Laughing Coffee member and SAO, and was one of the ones that survived the attack, the raid that Kirito and the other assault team did to stop out the player killing, and that he just pretty much likes to be a kind of killing god kind of dude. That's not really developed that much. So, of course, we get to the Death Gun dude, and Kirito and Sinon being the last ones pretty much. They do have an epic fight. Kirito doing some weird kind of glowy thing, pretty much becoming one with the environment to slash and take out the Death Gun dude. Him and Sinon pretty much kill themselves to become co-winners. And see, they're afraid because they're like, who's going to come and take out... They've targeted you, Sinon. What are they going to do? So, of course, we find out that her friend, who we find out is just kind of like in Alfheim Online, really creepily obsessed with her and tries to rape her. Now, there's not really that much depth. That's about it. He is creepily obsessed with her and then proceeds to try to rape her, which is way too similar to the Alfheim Online thing in the previous arc. It's like your main villains at this point are a crazy dude who builds a VR death game, dude that kidnaps a girl and pretty much tries to marry her and rape her, best friend that tries to make friend feel powerful and then tries to rape her when the advances aren't really reciprocated. It just goes to show that the depth of the villains are severely lacking with this, because there could be more motivations. There could be other ways to do with it. It's like, okay, let's have another rape villain. I guess. It's just, I wish there was more to it. It's like we already had this just last time in Sword Art Online in the Alfheim arc. Did we need to go here? I almost wanted just someone who's just obsessed with death and just wanting to be a powerful god and kill someone. I'm like, okay, that's different kind of motivation, different kind of motivation. This one is just kind of like the same kind of power control. He wants to control her like the previous dude wanted to control Asuna. Okay. I just wish there had been more done. But of course, Kirito comes in and saves the day, and she pretty much gets wrapped up into the group. I'm like, okay. I really liked Sinon as a character, and what they were doing with her trying to, like, figure out her whole trauma with guns and everything. And her being stronger at the end was pretty cool. Tying that in with Kirito was not a bad idea. I just kind of wished she was more the focus and Kirito was a little bit more in the background, but I understand that Kirito is usually the main protagonist. So then we move to kind of the second arc, which is comprised of like two parts. It deals with like an Alfheim Online adventure and like an Asuna adventure for like herself, where I believe that Kirito is wisely utilized, kind of like how I was saying for the Gun Gale part. But this part is really good because this is kind of what I would think of like an MMO, a VR MMO anime would be, in that people are playing the game. And it's just about like the game and the connections and all that stuff. I was like, this would be good! And the first one, they're just in Alfheim Online. They find this random kind of quest that's pretty much going to initiate Ragnarok and like destroy the landscape and change it if they don't like get into the Frost Giants and claim Excalibur. And granted, they're like mixing a lot of Norse mythology and different stuff, but it was kind of cool. Just seeing them go through pretty much a raid dungeon and, of course, figure out what they needed to do to get there fast enough to save these creatures and save the Alfheim Online map as it is. And it was like, oh, cool, this thing from Sword Art Online has this, like, randomized thing that'll pull things and create vastly interesting scenarios. I'm like, that's cool! That's the kind of stuff that I'm into when I'm, like, looking into, like, gaming and the VR MMO kind of scenario. I'm like, this is cool. This is exactly what I would kind of picture what I was supposed to be getting into with, like, the original. And I'm like, alright, cool. So they get some interesting stuff where they're like, Klein gets into, like, saving this one chick, and I'm like, oh, okay. And it turns out that it's Thor. It's like, god damn it. And he's still kind of, like, going after these, like, other kind of people that, well, NPCs that are the ones that, like, reward him for the quest. But it's, like, pretty cool. Kirito getting the, like, Excalibur sword and all that. And they just had a really cool adventure. I was like, oh, cool. That's alright. So then we get to the next one that deals with Asuna, the Mother Rosario kind of scenario, and we hear about this, like, great epic swords person. And even Kirito couldn't beat this person, calling them, like, a child of the, like, VR MMO. And, of course, Asuna goes to fight this swords person. We find out it's this girl, Yuki. And, of course, they have this pretty epic duel, and I really gotta handle it to them for using this arc to kind of, like, make up for what they did to making Asuna essentially just an object to say with the original Alfheim Online arc. This really brought into effect her stuff with, like, VR MMOs and, like, her mother and her pushing her to do all these kinds of things, and her mother and her not understanding kind of butting heads, while she's also trying to help this guild fulfill this at first seemingly insane request to beat a dungeon boss with just a party of 7 instead of the usual complement of like 7 parties of 7. So it's like, okay, so she's able to train them up and all that. It's like they only have a certain amount of time to do it, and it was really interesting because you find out that they all have like terminal illnesses, and we find out that Yuki has AIDS and that she's probably going to die pretty soon, and that to like deal with the like pain and all that, they have pretty much had her immersed in VR most of the time. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. So that's why Kirito is like, oh, she's like a child of like the VR MMO kind of thing, of virtual reality. And it shows them like her skills and all that. And of course, they have trouble, and that like this one giant raid group's trying to get to the floor boss before, because they want to do it with just a group of 7 because they want all of their names immortalized, and Yuki was essentially trying to look for that one person to kind of like Sherpa them through and figure out how to get through it. So, of course, they are able to get in before the other A group, and they beat it. And seeing all their names on there is pretty cool. And that's, of course, where Yuki kind of leaves, and Asuna kind of figures everything out, visiting her, and kind of like taking her around and taking her to school with the tech that Kirito's been building to use for Yui. And that was pretty cool. I really like these two arcs because there weren't just paper-thin villains. There weren't really that many villains. The whole thing with the Ragnarok thing was, oh, we have a situation that we have to stop. Only we can do it. Let's do this. Here, the villain was more of like just time and a disease. And it was like, oh, okay. So it really pushed with like character development. And I was like, cool. And seeing like Asuna kind of like come to terms with herself and her strength and finding new understanding with her mom was actually pretty cool. So I would more recommend Sword Art Online 2 for viewing more than like the second half of the first Sword Art Online. And just like, okay, watch the first half of Sword Art Online, find out that they have like an Alfheim Online, and then go to the second one. Now, granted, Gun Gale's a little bit shaky, but it's got more positive than it has negatives. And then of course, the whole just regular MMO experience was really kind of good, and I'd really recommend watching it. Now, the only problem that I kind of ran into is that Netflix didn't have the dub, and I watched Sword Art Online dubbed, and then I had to watch this sub. Now, it wasn't a big deal. It was just kind of like, okay, that's a different voice than I'm used to. And I'm like, why isn't there the dub? Rights are weird, man. But I really liked what they did with the second half, and I liked a majority of what they did with the first half of Gun Gale Online. So, if you're really into Sword Art Online, of course, just continue going on. If you're like, I don't know, I would definitely recommend watching the later episodes of like 13 on to the end of this, because it really, you don't really have to know that much about Sword Art Online. It helps, but it really kind of represents a thing that I kind of would have liked to have seen in the initial premise of what I thought of Sword Art Online to be. So those are my opinions on the anime. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.